We've got Christof here, and we're going to talk about music and the power of music thinking. We're going to talk a little bit about Christof's book. Before we get into that, Christof, where can people find you?
The best thing to find me would be on musicthinking.com or on LinkedIn. And if you connect on LinkedIn, please say that it's from the show that you heard the talk, so that I know why you want to connect, or Twitter or any other social media.
So Christof, you started life as a joiner doing carpentry. So how did you get here?
It's a long journey, and you reminded me that we only have 20 minutes, so I'll give you a short version.
Yeah.
So my parents had a joinery, and actually I didn't really know what to do, so I just did there my apprenticeship, and I worked there. And when I went to do my civil service in the psychiatry, then I had the idea, maybe working with the hands, that works, but there's much more. And so I went into philosophy and musicology. So that was my interest.
So you became a musicologist, didn't you?
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. A musicologist is someone that knows about music, but that doesn't necessarily play an instrument.
That's correct. And there are some people that can be very fond of, let's say, of every detail that in the time of Beethoven, how the symphony were done, stuff like this. And I'm a little broader.
And broader than just Beethoven.
Yeah, broader than Beethoven. But I love them all, the music. And that's and I realized much later, when I was ready with the studying, I worked in a film production company. And that was in the 90s, so many years ago for some people. And I had the idea, when we were doing filmings, live filmings with the biggest stars in classical music and jazz, that we could do this also for the internet. So I invented online interviews, which was something like, I asked people in the internet, do you have a question, for example, for B.B. King? And at the moment supreme, I could sit together with him and say, okay, I'm just a medium, so I'm not the journalist, I'm just more the medium. That was really funny. And so I did with Isaac Hayes, and in classical music, Daniel Barenboim, Zubin Mehta, and a lot of people. And so I really, and it really brought together technology and music, and also that performing really at a certain time, sitting together, doing all this organization. And then I went into the agency world. So I left music and I just get into service design, innovation, and things that a lot of buzzwords that we're using today.
And so you then started doing that for a number of years. So explain to us what you did, because it's important, isn't it, in terms of building where you are today and why you wrote the book.
Right. So, actually my roots are in digitization. So in the 1990s, I learned HTML in the train while traveling, while commuting. So, and then I could use it directly for online interviews, making pictures. And for the record, we didn't have any smartphone yet, so we just had modems. So this was something. I'm a doer. So that's also the link to the joinery. You join stuff and people and bring them together. And when we had some co-production people, we also produced CD-ROMs with Joe Cocker and a lot of stuff more. And then people asked me, "Hey, why don't you work for us?" And I didn't know the agency scene, so I just went into it, and I realized, oh, that's cool. So it's like a pitch is like a performance. Sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. You have to prepare to work with the team, and at the very end, some people have to be better and not just richer. And let's say this brought me. I'm originally from the south of Germany. But since the year 2000, I live in the Netherlands and work in the Netherlands. My wife is Dutch. I have two girls, grown-up girls now. And here in the Netherlands, I started really developing into consultancy, agency. So it was always, you could say, it had to do with service design, although we didn't know that word in that time. It also had to do with innovation, but it was just more, when I think back, it was like words like multimedia. You don't hear that word anymore. Now everything is now in innovation or digital. So a lot of words changed in the years. And so I was creative director in agencies, a digital creative director, and also in identity, branding, development. And so everything came together: innovation, service design, branding. And at the very end, because my parents had the joinery and we had 100 people, 100 employees. So I realized that what I see much more things than other people, because I know that the organization is also an interesting part to do something. So if you do just innovation or just service design or design thinking, it will always give you some kind of result. But if you don't understand that this is the first part to change, or to organizational change, and that this has an impact on your brand, so that everything is connected. Let's say that's really my story. And that's also the link with the book, because
so let's come on to the book, because what you've done is that you pulled all that together with music, to which is therefore your music thinking, and how you've put that. So talk us through the inspiration for the book, and how you've pulled that all together.
Actually, there were two stories. One story was that when working in, let's say, in business, in organizations, in companies, I realized that when people work together, they are using musical terms. So, oh, that's cool, let's jam about it. Or we have to orchestrate this for the whole organization, or to pull all the stops. And I thought, hey, hang on, they're talking music, because pull all the stops comes from the organ, orchestration, from the symphony. So I thought, how can I bridge this for me? And for me, it was very natural, because I knew a lot about it. And when I was in 2010, I'm also a saxophone player, free improvised music since many years. That's really what I really like. We played in Russia, in Krasnodar, and we've been on a very big flea market. And I saw one of these stands with tools like screwdriver and everything. And in one corner there was a pile of vinyl records.
Yeah.
And it was really like something like music. All the things that I know, I could use as a tool. And actually, these things came together, that I registered musicthinking.com, and that was, I think, 2010 or even before.
Wow.
And that's why I have the .com. and then I started to collect a lot of different things, came up with a framework, with ideas, and gave them also a name, also a musical name. And it was a naturally development to bring all these together.
So one of the things that you do, from what I understand, is that you run seminars or workshops, and you do that with music terminology.
Yeah. The funny thing is, I always tell people, no one comes to me and says, Christof, we need a little bit more music thinking in our organization. I would love to hear this, and maybe this will be, let's say, in the near future. But people come with a problem or with a challenge. And this challenge always has to do with creating something new. Otherwise, they wouldn't need someone like me. Yep. It always has to do with, we can't do it alone, because we need certain skills. And there's a time frame, and you really have to be a people person, really bring people and ideas together. And that's where I tell people how I would approach this. And sometimes people ask, that's interesting and that's different, but what's the catch? So how do you think? And then I can come with the framework and tell them, that's the way how it works. So that's actually more the way people approach me, actually more for a problem or for a change in mostly innovation, or we call it service design, because I think there are no products anymore. So, but if we only think about a product, because a product is used, and then either before or after, you have an interaction with the company. So it's better to set your product, to set it up like like a service. And
So give us an example about how you've used music as a way to get an organization to innovate something.
Yeah. I must say I didn't use music. I used music thinking. That's a difference.
Yes.
Sometimes I use music to explain something that helps. And for example, when I do a workshop, I don't tell people, let's say, anything about music. I ask them, how do you listen? And when I ask people, okay, write down 2 or 3 songs that mean something to you. And often it means like, oh, that's my first kiss, or my wedding song, or anything else. And if you ask further, then you get a certain pattern. And sometimes, if I do this with a group of people, I will map this. Like, for example, how long are the pieces? All of them are 3 minutes. Are there any longer? Are they from the last year, or maybe from 20 years ago, or 100 or 150, or even longer ago? And if you map this, you can say, okay, this is your picture, your musical picture.
Yeah.
And then people understand, oh, hang on, that's interesting. It's like this or this, and it's never like everything is filled. So there's always, let's say, a heating point. You can say, oh, what can this mean? What does it mean? So if you only have, let's say, songs that last 3 minutes, I would say, okay, if you have a longer strategy project, and if your attention span is only 3 minutes, how do you do this? And people get the idea. So, and it's also, there's no right or wrong, because people like that music. So who would I be to tell them, oh, that's not so good and I like this more? Everything is good. And that's so easy. So I already begin where people are. And then you can talk about, for example, in Spotify, just to mention, talking about genre types, like classical music, jazz. Spotify is using at the moment nearly 6,000 different genre types. Wow. So if I tell these people, then they get the understanding, oh, we're just talking, this is pop, and this is classic, this is jazz, and this is folk. So, okay, now we have 4.
That's 4, yeah.
Right. And then the idea is, okay, yeah, there's a crossover between this and this. And I often ask them, do you know how this is made? What's the organization behind it? And then you get very quickly also in one of the interesting discussions like leadership, or I call it leadership and followership. Because often when you talk about leadership, then most of the time the classical music example comes to the table, and with the conductor as the leader. And my question, isn't the conductor the first follower of the composer in classical music?
Yeah.
That's already something like, okay, if you as an organization would like to need a strong leader personality, who's doing the compositions? And already, and people really get that. And that's also why I make a big difference between a metaphor and an analogy. Because a metaphor would be like what I just said, leadership, that's the conductor. And if you want to be creative, let's bring in the jazz guys. Let's say that's a metaphor. And I would say, oh, that's interesting, but let's see, how do the jazz guys organize themselves? How do they play together? How do they know how to play? What's there before, during, and after work? And what I just said, people really understand that this is something to dive into a little bit more. So really get into the analogy and say, okay, let's play this through in musical terms. And the good thing is, you can tell something that people are not offended, because it's just music. It's just organized in a different way. And then I have in my framework, I have something like let's say 4 phases, like listen, tune, play, and perform. And the listen goes through all the other phases through, and that's really something different. I've never seen this in any frameworks, because normally you would say you listen first, then you tune, then you play, and then you perform. But
Yeah.
it's highly iterative. And it depends. If you do classical music, someone writes the composition, some people bring in the band, they rehearse, they get on stage, and would say, okay, that's more a classical dynamic. That's something. But if you get into jazz, and let's say free jazz, so we don't even have a lead sheet and chords, just people start and they react to themselves. And
Yep.
that's really totally different, because then it feels like everything is happening at the same time. And then
Yep.
you can ask people, oh, did you experience something like this before, for example, in your work?
Yeah. So you created something called jam cards, didn't you?
Yeah.
Do you have some close by that you can use as an example?
Yeah. I've, that's the cover, the jam
Yep.
cards. And actually the jam cards are 4 or 5 years old. What I wanted to hear, or for example, what I do, in some workshops, most of the time more strategic workshops, I do something like what I call the serendipity lab. So normally if you do a workshop about strategy, people come in and they already know what they want to say, because maybe they're a little bit short in time, they just want to bring it on the table. And I ask them to bring in their earbuds or their headphones, and then we flip through the jam cards. And the jam cards work like this. They have a keyword.
Yep. Approach.
In that case, it's a picture, a snapshot, and there is a Spotify code. Hang on.
Yep.
Here. So even if people would see this now, they can scan one song that I connected to this card. So every card is a song. And on the back side, there is something like a trigger question, there's a quote, and there's a link to the music thinking frameworks. So what happens? People, they are lying on the table, people scan one song, and then they go to the backside of something else. So they make a mix for themselves, and that's the good thing. So it's not interesting to understand or get behind what I thought about this. It's interesting what you think.
Yes.
And so people are really, let's say they're come up with different ideas, because they make connections between sound, between what they see. Then it's like a 45. So it's also like you can play like a DJ, say, oh, these cards are good for me. And so people really get into some kind of interaction. Or there are words like conundrum, and maybe in English that's easy. If you do this in the Netherlands, people say, oh, what is it? Or entrainment.
Yeah, it's a bit of a conundrum.
Or entrainment, people say, oh yeah, entertainment. And I don't correct them, because it's not about me. It's about what they think it is.
Their interpretation, yes.
So that's one. So the jam cards can used in different ways. And when we did this, it's by BIS publishers. It's worldwide distribution. And they in that time already they asked me, oh, Christof, can you give us, let's say, a theory about this? So what's this all about? And actually that became the Power of Music Thinking book. And there's also a small story about the book, because as I told you, it's like 10, 12 years that I was working on different stuff, and there are many iterations. So if you would download the framework from my website,
that's what you've got on the poster behind you.
On the poster behind me. So, and if you go on musichthinking.com to the downloads, everything can be downloaded, and that one you can really print it very big. And if you if you have a look to this, so you see that I did one trick or one thing. So I thought that everything, all the approaches that we have, like service design, design thinking, branding, theory, I thought, okay, these are instruments. If you want to play together, let's first think about how we want to play together, what we want to play, and then bring in the right instruments and let's work together. So then the customer journey, for example, to be very concrete, or persona, is just an instrument to develop stuff that we have to do. And that's really something where people understand, okay, so, and the customer journey is not only from the CX guys or the UX guys, it's from all of us. And the customer journey is, there's a reality journey, like as it is now, and not the journey we all want so that we earn a lot of money as a company. So it's always about the user or the audience, if you want to stay in the musical terms. So that's that's one thing.
So, Christof, do you have a copy of the book that you can hold up and so people can have a look at it?
Yeah. So that's The Power of Music Thinking. Oh yeah, sorry. I wanted to tell the story that I had the book more or less ready.
Yeah.
And then I gave it to some people, get some reactions, and I was not happy with it.
Right.
And then I put it more or less away. And then someone like you asked me to be a guest in his show. That's, let's say, 1.5 years ago. After listening to that show, I thought, wow, that's the way to do. I'm much more easier in talking than in writing. So I thought I start my own podcast, and that's the Power of Music Thinking podcast.
Yep.
And in that podcast, I actually, everything that I already have written, I somehow could bring to the table and could in that way to bring it to a clearer form for me. So these two things are parallel. They have nothing to do with each other, because in the podcast I'm asking people that do something special and are musicians. So for example, I interviewed last week the director of the Design Academy in Eindhoven, and he is a conductor. And then you get the question, oh, hang on, what kind of music? What are you conducting? What are you doing? And then it really comes together. So that's really the podcast. But the book actually stands for itself. Here is the framework. So that's really let's say, if you want to have the book in one picture, that's it. There are some playlists. And there are some of these key visuals. And I explained them how it works. We just talked about the folk and the jazz and the classic, and also you can also download them as a PDF from the website. So the book is like a compendium. It starts with listen, tune, play, perform. I go through all the cues. So I didn't mention until now, but the cues are really the core, and then to some instruments, some templates, some approaches, some little workshop ideas, and at the very end I show how this might play together.
Christof, it's fascinating. Thank you so much. And we've had some great comments here from both Jim and Adam in terms of the fact that they're loving what you're saying. So in terms of the book, Music Thinking, I know you can get it on Amazon. So it's available on Amazon. If people want it, obviously they can go and get a copy. Remind people also where they can get hold of you. So that's musicthinking.com, LinkedIn. You're on Twitter, aren't you?
Yeah, Instagram. But I can tell you, I use and also Facebook. But my primary channel is the website, and my secondary, let's say, it's LinkedIn, because it's about connection. So if you want to connect with me, please drop me a line. Why? Because I'm an interaction guy. I don't only want to give. I also want to take, or the other way around. If you give, you will get something. So it's really like connecting, and that's like leading and following. That's actually the idea for. Hang on. So for leaders and followers. So that was for me the most important part of the book.
Christof, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing that. It's fascinating. I've been really looking forward to today. Music is a big part of my life, and it's interesting. When I first heard about it, the fact that you've kind of merged music and business, and given that kind of put them in the tumble dryer together and mix them up, I was really interested in hearing what you had to say. So thank you so much, and the audience has obviously loved it as well. So
because Tim, you're a vinyl collector, so we didn't.
I am a vinyl collector. Yes.
Yes. So how big is your collection?
I have about 2,000 vinyl records.
Wow.
And I have about 878s.
Oh wow! And is there a certain genre that's close to
Unfortunately, yes. So I have a very eclectic music. You know, I like music from all kinds of different places. My father was a big classical music lover, and that rubbed off on me. But my background really is I'm a child of the 80s.
Right.
So I was 12 in 1977 when punk came out.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and that influenced me, and rock and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I do.
Nice, nice. I love it. I also had a punk band in the 70s.
Did you really? I tell you what, I'm a big. In 1999, I decided that I wanted to understand jazz because my father liked it, even though he was a big. And I remember coming in at night and seeing it late night on the TV, and it was. And I actually said something. I actually think someone said this, but I actually said it, came up with it myself, which is with jazz. I said it doesn't feel. I said to my dad, it doesn't feel like they're playing something. It kind of feels like they're feeling it.
Yeah,
And so in 1999, I decided to go on a quest to understand jazz, and I built out a very big, obviously you start off with Miles Davis and John Coltrane, and then move into Sonny Rollins and the Blue Note stuff, and then you go through their journeys because they moved into improvisation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I built that out as well, and so I have quite a big jazz collection, as well as was it Steve Coleman and his 5 elements, and
right.
where they move into polyrhythms and stuff like that, which
Wow.
again is used a lot in certainly prog in rock music and stuff. So
Yeah. Oh wow, that also resonates a lot with me, a lot with my playing. Thanks for sharing, Tim.
Thank you, Christof. It's been fantastic, and thanks to everybody for all the comments. Really appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much.
Have a great day, Christof. Thank you.